What's up everybody, it's your boy Rebel here, and due to it being the end of the world, I've got toilet paper, water, a ton of refried beans, and Mad Max the video game.
Intended by the Shimmy Shammy!
I love the smell of apocalypse in the morning. Are you sheltered up for the end times? Have a hankering for some hunkering down? Well, if you're like me, you probably thought, what better way to prep than by playing a post-apocalyptic video game? And my parents said video games wouldn't teach me anything. Mad Max the video game, first mentioned in 2008 by franchise creator George Miller, who originally sought Cory Barlog, known for his work on the God of War series, including game director of 2, to lead the project. Originally being developed by Interplay Entertainment, the rights to the Mad Max video games were purchased by EA and prior work was scrapped. Despite that, Avalanche Studios developed it and Warner Brothers Games produced it, and absolutely no one knows why EA didn't make it. And by absolutely no one knows why, I mean, it wasn't on the Wikipedia. The game was set to be released in 2014, a year before the next movie in the franchise, Fury Road, was set to be released. However, the game was postponed and ended up coming out the same year as the movie. And to not confuse anybody, the game is not a tie-in to the movie. Which, I mean, his name's Max. He has a car. It's in the desert. Yes, the wide open desert. Being set in the Mad Max world, it takes place in what was once Australia, after a vaguely referenced plague causing sickness. So yes, this video is topical. And the ice caps melting, followed by oceans receding. What was once the ocean is now a vast expanse of sand, a vicious wasteland for wrecked vehicles, and an open playground for driving? So the game starts with you driving before getting your booty kicked and your car stolen by some guy named Scabrous Scrotus. He has a secret theme song. So you catch up to the old Scabby Scroty, and while attacking you with the chainsaw, you disarm him and jam that chainsaw right into old Scap Scrote before being launched off of the Land Mover. You find Scrotus's dog, who was kicked off of the Land Mover before you, and trek on before coming across a hunchback named Chum Bucket. Yeah. So Chum Bucket takes you to overlook a base where you see your car being disassembled. You go back to Chum Bucket's base and he shows you a car he's building, the Magnum Opus. While finding some parts, including selecting a base frame, you return to a very strange person, even by Mad Max standards, named Stank Gum, and he has destroyed Chum Bucket's base. The Chum Bucket. It's then that you escape with Chum and the Magnum Opus and are thrown out into the open world. And the game actually does a pretty good job of drip feeding the mechanics to you. Unfortunately, it gives the player just enough time to notice where a majority of these mechanics came from. We're introduced to the on-foot mechanics first when scouting with Chum Bucket, and it's just yellow ledges. Everything you climb is yellow. Yeah, being developed by Avalanche, the studio that makes Just Cause, it's bound to have cliche open world mechanics. And the colored ledges clearly pointed out like neon lights marking what you're supposed to climb on is the second biggest cliche in open world adventure games. And then we're introduced to the fighting mechanic. And it's just Batman. It's just Batman combat. And that's not a bad thing. Batman has a great combat system. However, it can feel a little off at times. It's not as strict, and weird things like doing a combo finisher before being attacked without any way to counter the attack, even though he clearly attacked you after you started the combo finisher. But besides that, it's the Arkham series combat. Push this button to attack while pressing this button to dodge or counter. We are also able to upgrade some of Max's stats and unlock special attacks such as a disarm and unique finishers. We also have a shotgun we can use in combat, as well as shivs, and picking up blunt instruments to use temporarily. We were also introduced to the driving mechanic of the game, and it's probably the most original aspect of the game. It's the basic driving mechanic you'd expect, but you can bash into enemy cars, shoot out tires or big gas tanks, harpooning doors, or using it to boost off into the enemy's bumper. Anything to destroy enemy vehicles. And a bunch of aspects of your car are upgradable. incredible. From attack, defense, acceleration, handling, top speed, it's actually pretty fun. They have a fuel mechanic, but it ends up playing a somewhat insignificant role in the overall game. The mechanic that is actually pretty well implemented is the water/health bars. Water refills your health, meaning you're usually keeping an eye open for a water source to make sure you're topped off, or a can of dog food to munch on. And now, the biggest cliche in open world action adventure games. Can you guess what it is? Did you guess location revealing vantage points? Yes, being a mainstream feeling open world game, it's only fitting that this game has some sort of vantage point reveal. A tower that you can climb, a big building, some other sort of tower you can climb. Well, this game has, it's a balloon. It's just a balloon you float up to reveal locations on the map. What the shit? Hop up into one of these balloons and mark every main point of interest in that region. And on that big old map, we'll find scarecrows and snipers, big metal torches, and big metal sniper perches along the road. There are minefields where we take the dog we found and Chum's buggy to disarm them, and convoys, a group of vehicles traveling on a set path with a main vehicle crowned with a hood ornament that's yours to win. There are also enemy bases all around the map, from oil mining sites and oil shipping sites where you just have to destroy the oil, top dog bases having you face somewhat of a boss in order to win new paint jobs for your car, each paint job matching the boss you had just beaten, and lastly, stank gum camps, camps where Stank Gum's personal crew are, and you just have to wipe them all out. And you may be asking, what does beating these places do? Where's the drive? What's the point? Well, this is a video game, so I mean, really, what's the point of any of this shit? Each of the 3.5 main regions is ran by someone who has beef with ol' Scroty Boy, and destroying anything of ol' Scabby Boys will lower the threat in that overall region, and in turn help whoever is in charge of that region, be it Jeet, Gutgash, Pink Eye, or Deep Frya. Mad Max names are weird. These leaders have a few missions for us each, albeit they're mostly fetch quests. Told to go find item at a location marked on the map, going to said location, finding said item, shoot flare, unlock upgrade. There really are like 10 of these quests. However, their strongholds are separately upgradable, giving you the ability to upgrade them to refill your ammo, health, water, gas, as well as automatically picking up all scrap from destroyed vehicles in that region, and marking all scavenging locations on the map. Scavenging locations are usually small points of interest, small quote-unquote bases, where a mix of scrap, water, historic relic collectibles, and the project parts needed to upgrade the strongholds are all found. And all of that scrap you find is, in turn, needed to upgrade the magnum opus and Max himself. Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. You clear locations to get scrap, to upgrade your vehicle, to do better and lower the threat, and get more scrap to upgrade your vehicle, and clear more spots to get more scrap. There are also challenges in the game. Defeat this many of these, do this many times, some revolving around ground combat, some car combat, and the rest being upgrading strongholds and destroying the Scrote Squad, challenges of these sorts. These challenges give you out-of-place tokens to give to a strange stranger, Griffa, who's your therapist, I guess? These upgrades are things not upgradable in the max menu. Getting more water, finding more scrap, weapons lasting longer. You get about 10 tokens a level, so you can seek Griffa out as soon as you can, or stack up the tokens to drop 20 of them all at once. There are also races that you can compete in. There are 3 different types of races, but they all consist of driving from point A to point B before the other cars. You know, racing. I mean, seriously, being a car game, racing is almost a necessity. However, the races are pretty lackluster and only 2 of them are required by the story. So continuing on with the story, we have 2 regions that are ours to wreak havoc through. However, hearing about a race at Gastown, Scrotus' stronghold, with a V8 engine as the prize. A V8 engine? Boy, do they know how to entice the players. So if we're gonna make it to Gastown, we have to get through the jaw first. A set of 2 hefty gates and a small track with enemy vehicles is what stands in our way. A couple missions for Jeet and Gutgash. who, while at the latter's stronghold, were first introduced to Hope and her daughter Glory inside of a cage. So needing to upgrade the harpoon and to unlock the thunderpoons, big staffs with exploding tips, we're then able to break our way through the jaw and now have access to Pink Eye's territory, as well as a smaller region around Gastown ran by the Deep Frya. It's now that we make our way out of the Great White, the expanse of land left after the oceans receded, and finally make it to a region that was once actually land, leading us to find nearby destroyed buildings such as gas stations and black asphalt roads, making driving feel noticeably different. And adding a new region to remove the threat from, that's even more upgrading that we'll be able to do. However, it is here that the game runs into one of its biggest problems: pacing. You have a few more missions before going after the V8 engine, and if this game has instilled anything into me thus far, it's to explore and take out every scrote we see. Meaning, in order to keep the game progressing at a natural rate, we have to go out of our way to complete a few story missions in order to unlock the base V8 engine, which is needed to upgrade every V8 modification after. However, to do so at a good pace, you're almost required to spend as little time in Pink Eye's region and to ignore Deep Frya almost completely until the mission right before you get the V8, pushing you into the endgame way before a point that makes sense, or locking half of the upgrades away until you do so. Yes, pacing, something actually very crucial to a video game, and something completely noticeable here and in stark contrast to the first half of the game, making it seem like they either failed at something they were obviously capable of, or just stop trying. So to win us a V8 engine, we make our way to Gastown, a huge factory spewing noxious gas into the skyline, surrounded by what looks like a massive landfill. One cool thing about the landfill region of Deep Frya is that there are no scrote bases. Instead, every scavenging location is essentially a base. So basically, they couldn't make the hardest places harder, so they made the not as hard places as hard as the hard places. Yeah. So we get to Gastown, and in order to race, we have to get lights for the race master, leading us into a region of sand dunes ruled by no one and inhabited by buzzards, slavers who are more primal than any enemy we've met thus far. We make our way into a covered airport and find a bunch of Christmas lights for the race master to wear. Who wrote this? We deliver the lights and have to find a fighter for the race. We enlist a drugged up chick named Tenderloin and are off to the races. We race against Stank Gum and destroy his vehicle, I think, and are given the V8 engine and the concubine Hope, who we ran into again with Stank Gum at Pink Eye's stronghold, both times without her daughter. Upon winning, we're to be rewarded by none other than old scabbed up Scrotum himself, this time with a lovely hat. He recognizes us right away, and we fight Scrotus while trying to escape, only to be shot with a crossbow by Stank Gum. I thought I blew him and his car up, but okay. We're knocked into the sewers and presumed dead. We're saved by Hope and taken to a doctor. We then awaken to a hallucination scene where we run into Dinky D the dog with a human body and Chum Bucket with a top hat. Okay. Who wrote this shit? We wake up and rescue Hope and the V8 engine inside of Stank Gum's car. I thought I blew him and his car up, but okay. We escape and make our way back to Deep Frya's. It's there that Hope gives us a mission to rescue her daughter inside the sand dune covered airport. While going after Glory on foot, Chum Bucket just dips on us.
Stay with the car.
What a bitch. We save Glory and make our way back to Deep Frya to return Glory and hopefully find Chum Bucket. Unfortunately, he's not there. So we make our way to his old base, the one destroyed in the beginning of the game, to find the magnum opus and Chum, who's been very badly injured, I think. Turns out to be an ambush, and Stank Gum is there all ready for us. He tells us Scrotus is going after Hope and Glory. We then kick his ass and run him over before heading off with Chum in the car back to Deep Frya's, hoping that Hope and Glory are still alive. Unfortunately, again, we're too late. Hope is gruesomely dead and Glory dies in our arms. We return to Gastown to figure out Scrotus's location and track his convoy down. After destroying his escorts, we attempt to ram him and his land mover off of a cliff. Chum protests and stays on the Magnum Opus's hood as we drive it into Scabby's vehicle. There's an explosion that kills Chum and sends the Magnum Opus off of the cliff, sacrificing Chum and the Opus. Scrody survives by driving off of the Land Mover while it's falling in a smaller car. We blow Scabby off, and seemingly unable to die, he attacks us once more. Before we remove the blade we jammed into his head in the beginning, and he finally dies in a spat of blood from the forehead. We hop into a very iconic VA Interceptor, look at the picture of our wife and daughter, and the game picks up exactly where it left off. Driving? And that's the story of Mad Max. As far as stories go, it's not that great. The characters are unimportant, everyone except you dies at the end. So many things that either don't make sense, only make sense because it's Mad Max, or don't even make sense despite it being Mad Max, but only in there because it was in the movies. So being that Chum and the Magnum Opus were destroyed, it's only fitting that they magically reappear for us to finish anything up we haven't done. Ah, the classic "we made a definitive end of the game, but in hindsight want you to keep playing it" trope. Nice. Now getting into some of the inner workings of the game, the audio. One thing I noticed was the way voices travel, creating an echo and drops and rises in volume as you venture further or closer away from who's talking to you.
Twinkly bag of lard puts you in the races?
First he wants an errand run.
However, that was horribly overshadowed by the fact that random sound effects kept cutting out, making the skull cracking noise or the box breaking noise you hear all the time very noticeable when it's not there. On top of that, I sense a huge missed opportunity with either original or licensed music. The scene from Fury Road with the guy with the flamethrower guitar comes to mind. Making a metal soundtrack, either original or not, would have been something that would have made this game stand out so much more. Then there's the graphics. Originally, the game was set to be released on PS3, yet due to the delays, the development was scrapped and everything was retooled, meaning the graphical jump from platforms was minuscule, looking better than some games that released on the PS4 and Xbox 360 at the time, yet nothing even remotely close to peak graphical fidelity. And I'm not saying the graphics are bad, they're just far from what they can be. So mediocre graphics with frame rate issues, an uninspiring audio soundtrack with buggy sound effects, a story that felt hodgepodge together with pacing issues that sprout up about halfway through the game, a borrowed combat system from another WB produced title, cliches from other open world action adventure games, whether it be colored ledges or vantage reveal locations, insignificant supplies that become abundant down the line. Basically a mix of non-sequiturs and unoriginality. And of course, the repetitive nature of the game. And add that to the not uncommon frame rate stuttering, and the flaws of this game become more and more evident. Yeah, this game does have some flaws to it, but it's not all doom and gloom here in the apocalypse. This game does have some good things going for it. Despite the genre of open world action adventures being pretty unoriginal on its own, they have a formula that's tried and true. Clearing the map is actually fun, albeit the scavenging locations become too abundant and can and should be ignored unless they have a stronghold project, a scrap palette, a historic relic collectible, or if you're going for 100%. The driving combat mechanics are pretty fun, and the anger in being pushed off the road and spun around and rammed, well, that's enough motivation to destroy every scrotum I see for the next 60 seconds. And the combat, while not as fluid as the Arkham series, it still works. And being less integral to the character of Max as compared to Batman, it's not immersion breaking when you get overpowered. Then you have the well-executed blend between the two, driving around, destroying scarecrows and snipers, decimating a convoy, and then taking on a base requiring you to leave your vehicle for the hand-to-hand combat. It's all very well executed, meaning if you're tired of driving combat, take out some bases. Tired of hand-to-hand combat? Go destroy some cars. Work to gain scrap, help who's needed for the next upgrade, upgrade that bad boy, and rinse and repeat. Okay, so while editing, I realized I had a bunch of funny things, funny gameplay that I completely forgot to write into the script. So I'm just gonna dump them all right here now, perfectly blended in with the rest of the video. At 2 different points in the game, I glitched behind a rock and then later a set of stairs. The game attempted to throw platforming in very rarely, which was still no. You can't skip the cutscenes, which made this cutscene incredibly unbearable.
Busted the jaw. They said it couldn't be done.
There is an airplane reference in the game.
Surely this is your work.
It is. And don't call him Shirley.
And another thing I noticed, being an American, I would often try to get in through the left door, even though the steering wheel's on the right side because the game's set in Australia, and the game decided to point that out to me.
Have you no remembrance of where the steering wheel is located?
Yeah, despite this game having a lot of good going for it, it's just as uninspiring as it was the first time I played it a few years ago. However, the gameplay itself is actually really good, something that I vividly remember from a few years ago. The worst part is, a lot of the flaws in the game are pretty evident, clear as day, meaning a sequel by the same development team would be able to flush out any flaws that the game has. However, it also means if a new setting is not introduced, or at the very least a way to keep the setting fresh, a sequel could be an improvement on gameplay with no real improvements elsewhere. So if they decided to make a sequel, it could very well be better than this game. It could also just end up being Mad Max 1.5. And that's the Mad Max video game. A game that, despite its flaws, is actually pretty enjoyable. Plus, the amount I've learned to prepare for the apocalypse is immeasurable. What the fuck am I doing? And that's all for this one. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed because I enjoy making videos like this. So if you did enjoy, go ahead and do me a huge favor and smash that like button, hit that sub button, and gently click that notification bell. All of that other wonderful good stuff. If you liked what you saw here, tell a friend. I don't know. But I hope you did enjoy. And until next time.